Morning, everybody, and welcome back to our daily briefing from Cannes with our partners Ketchum. And today I have Jim Joseph with me.
Paul.
Hi, Jim.
Hey.
And we're going to be talking about some of the issues and trends that came up during yesterday's Cannes. And I wanted to start once again touching on the issue of AI, which is pervasive at this year's meeting. But there was something very interesting yesterday that your MasterCard client, I think, Shelgaren, said, which was that breakthrough creativity is still going to come from human beings. And
so look, true.
I think that here in Cannes this year, there is a desperate sort of need for everybody to convince themselves that their job is going to be safe no matter what. We're still going to need great writers, even with generative AI. We're still going to need great strategic thinkers, even though AI can crunch numbers and predict how people are going to react to things. And we're still going to need great creatives. But that one seems to me to be more plausible, perhaps, than the other two.
I think it's definitely plausible. And there were a lot of people talking about it yesterday. Cheryl was certainly one of them. But there was generally the notion of true breakthrough creative and ideation and the insight that you need to ideate and the ability to bring an idea to life. That still has to come from humans. AI will help us get there and then certainly helps us to execute more efficiently even. But the notion of the ideation and the creativity part, not going to be replaced. Not yet anyway. That's still a human that's going to do that. And I don't think it's us just trying to convince ourselves that we have job security. I actually do think that is fundamentally true.
And some of those humans, right, are going to be PR people. I know that the advertising industry has invested very heavily over the last decade in making creative agency and ad agency seem synonymous. But if there's, again, a theme that I'm getting from the PR people here, it's that we're just as creative and just as capable of coming up with those big ideas. And we're seeing it, right, in the work. We're seeing it in the Golan work that won the Grand Prix. We're seeing it in the Sarah V work that was a big focus in healthcare yesterday.
Right.
So how are you seeing that creative, I'm never sure whether it's a battle or a collaboration between advertising and PR play out this year?
That's a really interesting way to think about it, because I think it has been a battle. And I think that battle is shifting to collaboration. We even had our own panel discussion about frenemies, which is sort of that traditional rivalry between an ad agency and a PR agency, and how that has now turned into collaboration. I sat in on a number of discussions yesterday with chief creative officers, big creative, global chief creative officers, who talked about the makeup of the creative team has changed. It's not the traditional copywriter, art director. That the team has expanded and it includes multi-disciplines and it includes multi-agencies. So I think there is a generally accepted consensus now that creativity comes from a collaborative team. I heard a lot of people say that it's not about advertising anymore. I heard advertising people say it's not about advertising anymore. And I heard advertising people say they don't do advertising anymore. I think that all of our jobs are expanding and shifting and blurring. And we're realizing that we have to work together. And I think Cannes is just a focal point where that's all coming sort of to fruition.
There is something interesting going on with advertising, right? I walked in the lobby of the lovely JW Marriott. I walked in the lobby of the hotel this morning. There are people there from Netflix advertising. And my first thought was, what the hell is Netflix advertising? Because I've never seen an ad on Netflix. I've also never seen an ad on Prime. And the fact of the matter is that people with means can buy themselves out of advertising now by subscribing at a premium level. And I've been wondering for a while, is advertising just for poor people now? And do you, in fact, therefore, to reach everybody else, need earned and social and all the things that we do.
Absolutely. I think you need a marketing mix, and that's where the marketing mix modeling comes in, where really understanding your audience, where AI helps you do that, but it still needs human intervention to really understand your audience and how are you going to reach them, how are you going to reach them on multiple levels. There was a lot of discussion yesterday about how not only do you have to reach them on multiple levels, but you have to reach them in multiple ways. So one message in this medium here, another one here, another one there, so that you're hitting them in different aspects of their lives to convince them.
But coordinated and integrated, right?
Completely
it doesn't have
coordinated.
to be the same message, but it has to be the values and the underlying premise have to be sustained and
exactly. And all ladders up to whatever your brand messaging is that you're trying to convince them.
I mean, I'm glad you mentioned marketing mix modeling, because the first company I think of when I think of marketing mix modeling is P&G. And I was going to segue into a session that Damon Jones from P&G did yesterday on culture and tapping into culture. So tell me a little bit about that, and again, how that maybe plays to our strengths.
Absolutely. Well, I think P&G is sort of the perfect example of a company and brands that lead with culture. And we talk a lot about culture first creative, because the creative that we put out in the marketplace, again, which has to be done by humans, has to reflect the culture that we're trying to attract. Because if we don't reflect that culture, then the culture doesn't see itself. And again, AI isn't going to help us do that. In fact, AI is going to reflect probably a culture of the past, not a culture of the present. And we actually just recently did a healthcare study that taught us that current patients say that they will accept healthcare information and healthcare messaging from people that look like them and who sound like them and who have issues like they do, before they will accept messaging from a renowned expert who maybe doesn't look or sound or feel like them. So the notion of culture is a personal one. It's your culture, and you'll accept it when it relates to you. And we talked a lot about that in Damon's panel, as well as in many panels yesterday, about how we have to reflect the culture. And one of the things I love about marketing is that I think marketing does both. It reflects the culture, it should, but it also shapes the culture. And we have a responsibility to shape culture.
And that's really interesting, because things I keep hearing in Cannes, we always used to talk about the 4 Ps, but the P's that I'm hearing about here are things like precision and performance and personalization.
Yep.
This idea that everything now has to mean something to the individual recipient, I don't think there is a mass consumer anymore, right? But we're getting more and more precise and personalized.
We are, and it was really interesting. We had a panel with our Mars client yesterday, and he talked, along with some chief creative officers across a number of agencies, he talked about how the creativity and the messaging and the platform needs to feel like it was mass, like it's got to have that mass engagement and that mass sort of production value even, but then it has to be personalized to you as a person. And that's where culture fits in, because it has to fit with you culturally, it has to fit with whatever your life is and your issues are and your pain points. And that's where the personalization comes in. It's like, okay, this is adding value to, sorry, microphone. This is adding value to me in my life. And that's where the personalization comes in, rather than some sort of mass message that sort of washes over everybody.
And again, coming back to the pop culture idea, Cannes is very much, it seems to me, where the advertising industry and the PR industry meet popular culture in a big way. And it's a heavily celebrity focused meeting. I think yesterday's breakout star, if you like, was probably Halle Berry and running down the Croisette with the Olympic torch.
Right.
But I know that there were panels with Megan Rapinoe, with John Legend. I know my colleague Arun was very excited to meet Andre 3000 on the plane coming down here. And I'm on record as being a little sort of skeptical about the value that celebrities bring to an event like this? Are we there just to sort of, be seen with famous people, or are we learning anything from them? And you may have a slightly less cynical take than I do. I hope so.
You know what, I found as I was listening to many of them talk yesterday, and in years prior, although I think they're becoming more and more relevant actually, celebrities are just like us. They were talking about their creative process, and they were talking about what they need to do to come up with their own version of creativity. John Legend was talking about finding a creative space and like removing the outside world and finding his inner self. Megan was talking about finding holes in the marketplace, her own marketplace. Like, she doesn't just want to talk about herself. She wants to find holes that she can uniquely fill with stories. Right. They all talked about storytelling in their own, whether it's writing music or posting content. So I found it fascinating to hear what they do to be creative in their own ways and means, which is what we do. We have to find our own ways of being creative, whether we're labeled a creative in our job title or we have other labels in our work. We're all creative in this industry. So I found it really relevant to hear a high profile person talk about how they're creative, how they struggle with being creative, how sometimes they have creative blocks. So I thought it was pretty relevant.
So I ended yesterday's conversation with Joanne by talking about the Golan work that had won a Grand Prix. So let's keep that sort of theme going and talk about a piece of breakthrough creative. Yesterday was the Health Lions. You were engaged with that a little. For me, the piece that stood out was Ogilvy's work for CeraVe. Mm-hmm. But was that the case for you? And what else did you see in the Health Lions that was interesting?
Yeah, certainly not surprised to see the CeraVe work sort of take a center stage. I mean, it was a blockbuster work.
Right.
It hit everybody's top 5 list in the Super Bowl, so it wasn't surprising to see it pop up here. And it was super, super creative. But what I found really kind of motivating with a lot of the other winners is I felt like we were back to healthcare. For years, the healthcare Lions were dominated by very lofty, purposeful work, which is great. And there's nothing better than that in healthcare. Saving lives is, that's where it's at. But it was very lofty work. You almost had to like cure the world of some rare disease in order to be noticed. And this year, a lot of the winners were actually back to patient engagement, improving patients' lives, taking some pain points out of the healthcare system, whether it was creating an audio track to sort of mask the noises of an MRI machine, which is really scary for a child, or a cookbook to help somebody deal with like the food issues that come up with a treatment. I mean, it was back to those kind of basics, but done in a really creative, consumer, culture first, talk about culture first way in healthcare. I was really motivated and inspired to see that. So as big profile as the CeraVe stuff was, and it's always fun to see that kind of work, I was inspired by some of the more like hardcore healthcare, improving people's lives kind of work.
Great. All right. Thank you, Jim. Tonight is the presentation of the PR Lions. So that should give us plenty of food for thought for tomorrow's briefing from Cannes. I hope you'll all join us again for that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Jim.